Hey, Irish fans, it's time for the Notre Dame football update with Tyler Horka. Tyler, you listened into what Brian Kelly had to say on Monday, as well as Virginia head coach Bronco Mendenhall. We know one thing's for sure about the upcoming game. Notre Dame's going to have to try to win a road game with just 5 scholarship wide receivers. They'll be without the services of Avery Davis.
Yeah, Avery Davis is obviously out for the season with that ACL injury, and that's a big blow for this Notre Dame football team. Davis had played the most snaps of any of Notre Dame's wide receivers, and they've really relied on three core guys with Davis, Kevin Austin Jr., and Braden Lenzy. You take one of those guys out, those are the three guys on this team that had played over 400 snaps. The next closest receiver on that list in terms of snaps is Lorenzo Styles at 90. So he's going to have a huge boost. Kelly said he's moving him over to the slot. So look for Styles to get his first career start. He's at the top of the depth chart. Behind him on the depth chart in the slot now is Matt Salerno, a walk-on. So the depth, as you mentioned, with these scholarship wide receivers is very thin. I would look for Chris Tyree to get some, looks in the slot, maybe even Kyron Williams. I think the Notre Dame offense has to change a little bit just because, Avery Davis was probably one of the most reliable receivers, if not the most reliable receiver on this team. He had touchdowns in 3 games in a row going into that Navy game. Obviously got hurt in that Navy game and only had 2 catches as a result, but just a really big blow. And, it's next man up, and that next man is Lorenzo Styles.
It's worth mentioning those 5 scholarship wide receivers. That does not include Michael Mayer at tight end. Don't you feel like they could get more out of him? It's not Michael Mayer's fault, but you'd figure he becomes even more of a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian Kelly mentioned his name in the press conference when talking about some of these things that they're going to have to do to, revamp their offense in the wake of Davis's absence. It's definitely look for Michael Mayer, especially in the red zone. I mean, I don't know how Notre Dame hasn't looked his way more in the red zone, but I mentioned all those touchdowns that Avery Davis has been catching. Michael Mayer's a pretty good option to look for in the red zone as a result of that injury.
Speaking of really fantastic football players who are All American type players, Kyle Hamilton, we know he will not play this week. Questions now, Irish fans wondering, will he ever play again for Notre Dame? Tyler, first, your impact on him just not playing this week, and then what's your kind of read on this situation as a whole?
Yeah, well, obviously we'll get into some Brennan Armstrong talk, but if Brennan Armstrong is playing, then obviously Notre Dame would love to have Kyle Hamilton on the back end because Brennan Armstrong isn't just a gunslinger who's getting it out 5 to 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. He likes to take deep shots, and he
Yeah.
takes more deep shots than almost anybody in the country. So you'd love to have Kyle Hamilton. Obviously, that's not going to be the case for Notre Dame. So as you mentioned before, at this point, I think it's fair to speculate if we'll see Kyle Hamilton in any game the rest of the season because once this Virginia weekend is over, now you only got uh, you know, 2 more regular season games to play, and then obviously there will be a bowl game, maybe a playoff game. We'll see, but it's just getting at week by week these updates are starting to get a little more obscure. And
Mhm.
Brian Kelly kind of had a word salad when talking about Hamilton and saying the MRI is complete, but they're probably going to be there's going to be another MRI, and he's going to have to talk to his parents, and it's just a whole situation right now. And at the end of the day, it sounds like if healthy, it's going to be up to Kyle Hamilton whether he wants to play, and there's pros and cons for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned that about Brennan Armstrong at the beginning of your answer because it's easy to think he's just a sandlot quarterback, but he really knows how to throw the deep ball, especially towards the sideline. Ranks what, second in the nation in passing, first in total yardage. An extremely dangerous player.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've written about it at blueandgold.com all week and even parts of last week. This game completely hinges on whether or not Brennan Armstrong is healthy because if not, it sounds like Virginia is going to start Jay Woolfolk, a freshman quarterback who has not started a game in his college career. So you go from one of the more experienced and better quarterbacks in college football to a guy that has only attempted a handful of passes. So the difference there is, extreme. And if Brennan Armstrong is playing, he's probably going to be hampered a little bit too. So we talk about all this downfield passing and the amount of passing that he does in any given game, it might not look the same. So advantage Notre Dame for sure, just in the fact that one, he's a game time decision, and two, even if he does play, he's probably not going to be the Brennan Armstrong that he's been all year.
Speaking of word salad, it was actually entertaining to watch and listen to Bronco Mendenhall work his way around the same sort of questions about Brennan Armstrong that the Notre Dame media is feeding Coach Kelly about Kyle Hamilton. Make sure you guys, Tyler just mentioned blueandgold.com. Make sure you check out all of our coverage. We've got the Navy game on a wrap if you want to look back at that stuff, plus plenty of preview stuff coming out about the Virginia game. Hit like on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and look out for our newsletter. You definitely want to sign up for that. An easy way and a free way to keep up to speed with all the content we're throwing out there. Tyler, it's Tuesday, so that's while we're recording this. So that means that the college football playoff rankings will be updated tonight. Where do you think Notre Dame ends up? Yeah, I mean, they had some obviously some losing activity in front of them last weekend.
Yeah, obviously Wake Forest was a huge loss with Notre Dame being ranked 10th and Wake Forest being ranked 9th. So you'd have to think that a one-loss Notre Dame moves in front of a one-loss Wake Forest. So there's, 10-9 right there. And then it'll be interesting to see how far Michigan State falls, losing to a Purdue team that Notre Dame has already beaten. And it wasn't the most convincing of victories, but it was a double-digit victory for Notre Dame. So that you have that comparing point right there, one loss Michigan State to a one loss Notre Dame. I don't know if Michigan State would fall that much, but Notre Dame's going to move up, maybe one or two spots. There's only 3 weeks of the regular season left, so I don't know if you can inch that much, all the way to the top 4 in only 3 weeks. So for Notre Dame in the college football playoff, it's going to be the same this week as it was last week, and it's going to be the same in the upcoming weeks as well. They need teams to lose in front of them, and that might include Cincinnati, which would be interesting because then you'd have one loss Cincinnati and one loss Notre Dame, and Cincinnati beat Notre Dame. But based on where they're ranked right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame moves ahead of a one loss Cincinnati. So you need teams like Michigan to lose. You need teams like Oklahoma to lose and Ohio State. And look, I said there's only 3 weeks left in the regular season, but all of those things are possible with how crazy this college football season has been. So 2 things for Notre Dame: keep winning and have a couple more teams, in front of you in the rankings lose, and this thing could be pretty interesting as we're sitting here 2-3 weeks from now.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees that Notre Dame's schedule is not great, right? But it is slowly looking better, particularly because of Purdue. Wisconsin might be the Big Ten West champions and have a shot at the overall conference champion. They're ranked 21st in the country now in the poll. And then, yeah, the Cincinnati thing's amazing because I feel like they got to lose or they got to look way better in winning. Because right now, the state that they're in, it just seems not to help Notre Dame at all.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, had they beaten Cincinnati, it would have changed everything. I think Notre Dame would probably be a top 5 team and control its own destiny for the college football playoff. Obviously, you're not going to keep a 12-0 Notre Dame out of the playoffs. So that one might come back to bite and just everything else that has happened in the college football season. But right now, it's getting more interesting by the week for Notre Dame in terms of the college football playoff. I wouldn't say they're out of it. I wouldn't say that they particularly like where they're at right now. Brian Kelly said he was even surprised that they came in at number 10 in those first rankings. But it'll get interesting down the stretch of the season if Notre Dame keeps winning. That's for sure.
All right, Saturday night, 8-1 Notre Dame against 6-3 Virginia. Tyler, we're looking forward to it. I know you are. Thank you for your time, man.
Good can't wait to travel out there. It'll be good.
Apparently a beautiful campus. I've actually never been, so I'm excited for you guys. That'll be awesome.
Absolutely, can't wait.
All right, bud. Later.